Final score at Celtic Park, Celtic 2, Aberdeen 2, and overall a pretty exciting matchup. Two teams, 100% records going head to head, and ultimately Celtic have to settle for a share of the points. This is Tino with the Final Whistle Show, joined here by Brydo. Brydo, your initial response to yesterday's result?
I mean, I thought it was a good game of football. We kind of predicted that in the pre-game. We obviously predicted Celtic winning by a couple of goals, but ultimately that doesn't always happen. And we made mistakes, and a well-organised team punished us for the mistakes that we made. With a lot of the ball, we had chances, another day some of them go in, and we get the 3 points and we go away thinking, oh, that was close. Compared to the football, mate, it's a sport, and you don't always win. Don't get me wrong, we'll pick out the faults and the negatives and the positives from the performance, but also kind of give the praise to a well-organised Aberdeen team.
On that then, you'll have seen the term doing the rounds last 24 hours or so about Aberdeen being quote-unquote the real deal. We're going to cover a lot of Celtic stuff as well, but we can't ignore what Aberdeen are doing. Do you think they've got enough in it or in them to push us all the way? The general response that I'm seeing just now from mates and otherwise is that they'll fall away at some point. I'm not necessarily sure that has to be the case, because you can only take care of what's in front of you. And, they've won their 7 games up until yesterday. And now they've gone toe-to-toe with us, the champions, a team with a far bigger budget than them. Expected, despite all the noise, Celtic were expected to win. But Aberdeen have shown up, and they've shown that they're not just going to disappear anytime soon. What do you think? Can they have a proper go at it?
I suppose there's one team I'd remind everybody of, and that would be Leicester City, not that long ago, doing it in a far harder environment with a far bigger gulf, probably. But I think, like you said, the general consensus would be that when those games come thick and fast, kind of that December time, you're going away from home, playing midweek. The only thing I'd say is that in comparison to us and then, I dare say, Rangers, is that Aberdeen don't have any European football to contend with. So they're just dealing straight up with the domestic game. Obviously, we've got them in a semi-final as well. So that, we've seen yesterday how tough a game we're going to get at Hampden. So, in a way, you'd like to think that they could, because the game needs something. I watched Rangers today, and, I'd be worried if I was them, because quite frankly, they're all over the place. There's no identity for them at all. Whereas Aberdeen are a team playing for a coach. They're putting the effort in for the coach. They're doing the tactics for the coach. They're acting out on the park week to week. They're not playing great. They're still winning games. Obviously, they got the point yesterday. So they answered a few questions themselves, Aberdeen. They've not played anybody yet. Well, they played the best team in the country by a distance. And if we're all being brutally honest, they probably deserve to go away up the road with something. So long term, it's difficult for them because they just don't have the same resources, but they've got some money. And if they think, and they're in a position in January, and they can go, do you know what? Let's give it a decent stab and invest perhaps in maybe better defenders or whatever, or something like that. You just don't know. I'd hate to say absolutely not a chance and look silly, but I'd like to think that Celtic would have far too much for them. But we don't play them every week. It's other teams that they're playing against. That's the problem.
Yeah, do you know, I think I've said this before, but whether you're Aberdeen, Hibs, Hearts, Dundee United, whoever, there's an opportunity. It's going to be hard resource-wise to compete, certainly with Celtic and to an extent with Rangers. But if you can be the best of the rest, if you can take care of business by beating all the other teams around you, and then step up to the plate on the occasions like yesterday, then you should be in the mix, and that should be the target. For too many years, Aberdeen are a good example of a side that I think have been underperforming. They've had some bottom 6 finishes as well, and some poor stuff going on there, despite the fact that I do class Aberdeen as a big club, and I'm quite pleased to see what they're doing, to be honest with you. And I think you've got a situation where they came to Celtic Park on Saturday there with the confidence that 7 wins in a row give you. Well, 7 league wins in a row, 13 wins in total across the campaign, League Cup stuff, etc. And think of the confidence those players have now got, Brydo. They've gone toe-to-toe, and they've got what I would say is a deserved 2-each draw. It's not been smash and grab. I think they're good value for the point. You imagine those players at training tomorrow, Monday morning, from an Aberdeen point of view. And what's really interesting is I think they've got Dundee United next weekend, and then a week on Wednesday, they're at home to Rangers. And I think that's so interesting. And I think maths-wise, if both teams win at the weekend, Aberdeen have got the chance to go 9 points ahead of Rangers heading into November. And I just think that makes for a really interesting story. And listen, I don't want to be here talking about this is great, this is exciting, and Celtic ultimately lose the league at some point to Aberdeen. But we need something refreshing. I think it's been a bit samey. Celtic got a bit of a challenge last year from Rangers, but they faltered badly. And I think it's a breath of fresh air to see something new happening. Right, we'll go back to the starter proceedings in terms of the lineup on the day. So the big talking point generally at this moment in time is the midfield. The defence is generally taking care of itself in the absence of Carter, Vickers and Taylor. So you've got Trusty steps in, and I know you want to speak about him to an extent, and Baye steps in at left back. Otherwise, you've got your goalkeeper in Schmeichel, you've got Alistair Johnson, and you've got Liam Scales. The midfield three is a bit of an ongoing question mark, although we accept that Callum McGregor will mostly always start, and £11 million Arnie Engels will mostly always join him. And it's Rio Hatate that's made up the three on Saturday. Do you think the manager got it right in terms of his starting 11?
I suppose yes, because there's somebody didn't have a choice. Left back, there's no choice, and I dare say centre half is no choice. And in the middle of the park, like you said, that's the kind of, some will debate different players. For the first half, Hatate was the right choice for sure, because he played his part in both goals. Celtic played, we played, I thought we played pretty well against a good side, and more than deserved our kind of 2-goal cushion. So the manager's vindicated for that, I think. It's then up to the players to manage the game in the second half. And then it all very, very quickly, and Hatate's involved in it, it all kind of starts slipping away a wee bit, and then it gives Aberdeen some impetus in the game to go and grab on and push on in the game with Celtic under a bit of pressure. So, yeah, I would say he got it right because of the first half, it was so good. But the second half, yeah, it just didn't really work for us that well.
I seen Rio Hatate getting a fair bit of stick online after the game. I seen Scales getting a lot of stick. I seen Arnie Engels getting a lot of stick. And I've got to be honest with you, it kind of pissed me off. I think, if I'm being really frank, I think there's been a real overreaction by some folks. You said at the top of the piece, Brydo, it's competitive sport. And on any given day, you can win, lose or draw a game. And Celtic, amongst any other club, have no God-given right or entitlement to go and win every game they play. I've seen some comments along the lines of, this is going to be a long old season. Can we give a bit of credit to the Celtic side who have so far blown away everyone before them domestically this season? Then you've won competitive 2-each draw with a pretty decent side, and for some it's the end of the world and he needs to go and he's not good enough. And I seen somebody slating Nicholas Kuhn, and I thought Nicholas Kuhn didn't have a brilliant game, but his numbers this season, I think he's got 14 goal contributions in 9 or 10 games or whatever. And all of a sudden, he can go, he's murder, and everyone can go. I just don't get it. And listen, this is a small section of Celtic support, but I don't think it's a great look at all. This, as I say, it's this sense of entitlement, and I've just seen an overreaction to what I think has been a really decent Celtic side domestically this season. Then one game we don't get a full 3 points, and it's a disaster. What do you think of that response by some?
I just think we need to calm down a wee bit sometimes. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being passionate and demanding high standards, and that's really what Celtic, call it a curse or playing for Celtic, if you like, for some players, because they just can't cope. They could do it at other teams, and the jersey's too heavy at Celtic, and that's particularly why, because the demands that us as fans put on the players isn't like anywhere else, really, if I'm being honest. You're right, certain things that you read and hear, you kind of just shake your head a wee bit sometimes, because if this was a prolonged issue, then you'd be like, yeah, fair dues, So like Neil Lennon, not winning that 10 in a row season, that was a prolonged problem in a number of areas. Yeah, I'm not saying start throwing barriers and stuff again, but we're being entitled to then voice our discontent. Now, we're unbeaten in the league. We've drew one game, and quite frankly, in all other games, with the exception of a couple, we've looked pretty good. And even in that game, with 75% possession, like I said at the top of the show, and another day we walk away with 3 points. But sometimes just in sport, it doesn't happen. It just doesn't work that way. And fair play, their manager changed their tactics and stuff at half time, and it spooked us. And we just didn't really. They got 2 quick goals, and before you know it, the game's completely flipped and changed. It happens. We've done it to other teams, like it just relax a wee bit. Even with the transfer window and stuff as well, I was saying, look, just chill out a bit. Like we're going to get to where we need to be, I think, and on most occasions we do. But yeah, I suppose the times that we don't, that gives people perfect kind of ammunition to start throwing out the stuff that we see in here. So everyone's entitled to an opinion, of course they are. I just don't share some of those opinions as quickly as they're given out, and I just think maybe give the guys a chance. I mentioned trust earlier on. I don't want to go in hard and heavy on some people, but you've got to give them a chance. But at the same time, we can assess and analyse their game.
Absolutely. And it's opinions that keep it interesting, Brydo, and it's always good to have kind of healthy debate on these things and back and forth. I just thought some of the comments that I've seen online particularly were just over the top in my opinion, but hey ho. There's lots of good comments coming in just now, and thanks to everyone that's joining us here on the live. Scott McCrory, Anthony Aitken, Gypsy King, Doc, various others. Thanks for your comments as always. We'll be running for about half an hour this evening. Thanks for joining us kind of late on a Sunday night. I know it's bed and bath time for you soon, Brydo. If anyone's got any further comments or questions for us over the next 20 minutes or so, let us know and we'll do our very best to get to them. Let's get to some of the good stuff, because there was plenty of it, at least in that first half for Celtic. Brydo, you mentioned the possession. We dominated the stats. There's some ridiculous efforts on goal stats as well. There's some big numbers there. And ultimately, I think Celtic have scored 2 pretty good goals, pretty enjoyable goals, and fairly unusual for Celtic to score what I would call counter-attacking goals. We've won the ball and we've transitioned into attack and we've broke at speed, and it's exciting to watch. I really enjoyed the 2 goals, I've got to say. And let's get to the first one. It's a lot of good work down the right-hand side by Kyogo. He finds himself in the box with decent opportunity and cuts it back. And it's Ray Hatate who took the stick for his second half performance, but he's got us off to a good start there with a really tidy finish.
Yeah, it was like you said, it's exciting football in that way. Throughout the game, both teams punished each other's mistakes, and it came from a loose pass by a pretty decent player, and that is at Keskinen, I think, in the middle of the park. And Celtic pick it up, and like we've seen a few times this season, to be fair, we break with a lot of pace, with a lot of intent, with a lot of aggression and desire to get up the park and score a goal. And that's exactly what we've done. Kyogo's movement was great. He makes he's making a run that he can't score the goal, and it's a selfless run that drags the defender out. And one kind of still of that goal, you actually see Kyogo getting the ball, and there's like 4 Celtic players in the centre of the park with no Aberdeen players anywhere near them at that point. He takes a few touches and he plays a really nice weighted pass. And Hatate does what he has done so many times for us. He's got the quality, the composure, and he tucks it away. And it's a really, really good finish, a really good goal. And we've punished the mistakes that their opposition made. And I think Celtic have been excellent at that this season, winning that ball, pressing the midfield, winning the ball back, and then breaking. And like you said, it's exciting to watch because the pace that we do it at. It's a fantastic start, and it's exactly what we said we wanted and thought we needed, to break them down early and set us off. And that's what we got.
Yeah, and that's 24 minutes in. I thought, as a contest, Celtic were in control at that moment in time. And as I say, the possession stats bear that out. But those stats really don't mean a thing unless you get your goals. That's the bottom line. You've got to capitalise. And Celtic did. And then it's only 3 minutes later, Kyogo, provider for the first goal, tucks it away for the second. And he's got a wee bit of work to do. There's guys throwing their bodies in front of him, but he's had the savvy to put it other side. I think that was quite a cheap mistake as well. You've mentioned that Celtic have capitalised well on errors from opposition. I don't know if it was Thelin that made the block, but he's put it back into a very dangerous area, hasn't he? I thought he had options to maybe shell it out the park or whatever, but he's put it back into the most dangerous area, and it ultimately ends up with Kyogo. And as I say, he's tucked away nicely.
Yeah, and it's just Kyogo between the posts, and he swivels and finds a corner. He's so good at it. We've had many things said about him being the best since Larson and stuff, and I don't think many people can argue that. I don't think anybody would argue that, to be honest. Again, though, Aberdeen tried to play out for their goalkeeper. They tried to play a certain type of football, And we picked the ball up, and again, it was our midfield that won that second ball, and we were done that the whole first half, really. We won the second ball. We won the second ball for the first goal, and when the second ball, McGregor wins it, plays it to Maida, who didn't have a great game, a weak cross, and like you said, but we've got players in the box with that aggression, the hunger to get in the box, and from that, we pounce on the mistake. If they're not making that, if Hatate doesn't make his run, then, you know, he doesn't get in the end of Malloy's mistake. And again, fair play to Hatate for that, because he gets in that position. His shot's blocked and Kyogo makes the most of it. And then at 2-0, I think we'd all be forgiven for thinking, right, go and get the third, you know, well, their kind of chips are down a bit, their bubble's burst, let's get the 3 points and show them who's boss. But it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah, do you know, when it goes 2-0, part of me was thinking that you're now just going to go and cruise it. You know, well done, plucky Aberdeen. You've had a good start to the season, but we're going to take care of business and it'll finish 3-4, maybe even 5-0. But I think ultimately, as I say, you've got to convert your chances, and we'll get to a big chance Kyogo had in the second half. Engels has played a really great ball at him, and you would bank on him tucking away, and he doesn't. And that comes back to bite us. You know, it ultimately ends up the draw, as we all know. I mean, there's a couple of comments, you know, folks saying Aberdeen aren't the real deal. Tiger here is saying that he has to disagree. He doesn't think Aberdeen deserved a point. I disagree with that, but that's fine as well. I thought they showed enough. And what I think they did show, and this show isn't all about praising Aberdeen, but, you know, we've got to be real about it and give credit where it's due. I thought the manager made some really brave calls at half-time. He has double substitution at the interval, so he's taken off Clarkson and Nisbet up top, and he's brought in Sockler and, let me see, Duke. Two guys that have had an impact in the game to some effect. And it's refreshing, as I say, to see teams come to Celtic Park and play in a different way and have a go at it. And I'd like to think and hope that it might inspire others to do the same. Come and have a go and go toe-to-toe, and you might well steal a draw or be adventurous, and you never know what could happen. But ultimately, Aberdeen, through their manager, who seems a very decent coach, has gone for it. You know, he could have settled in. Some managers will go and they'll take 2-0 at Celtic all day long. That's fine. We've not taken a doing. We'll go back up the road and we'll go and be the best of the rest. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to go for it. He's made a very positive change. And as I say, it's had a real impact. And obviously, they get the goal, or the first goal, early in the half. Lots of folk want to criticise Liam Scales for this. I don't. I think it was a brilliant pass from Jamie McGrath. Talented player, really good player, former St Mirren, I think, and Irish. And there's an angle, a unique angle of him playing the pass. The technique is class. Just admire from a football point of view. It's a great pass. And I think Sockler's just made the great run. Scales has been unable to cut it out. And he's still got work to do. And I think just before we come on, you said his finish. He looks like Majowski, and he finished like Majowski. And that's given him a huge lift. It's a really decent goal. And sometimes we might do this at times ourselves, Brydo. You analyse goals to death, and he gave it away early and he was cheap and he could have made a tackle and he could have done better, which is fine. But sometimes a goal's just a good goal, and that's the bracket I put that one in.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it a bit more in depth because I was thinking, why on earth is Scales the only defender between the width of the 18-yard box? And when you look at it and analyse it a bit more than that, you know, Hatate's lazy when he's pressing the ball. That's not the way we've been playing this season. That's the first press, and the defender, he dinks a ball into McGrath, who then has acres of space. So I don't know where the other midfielders are at that point. I have to think it's something to do with changing the changing of the shape from Aberdeen, because Duke's dragged Trusty to like the right back position, and Trusty's absolutely no. I don't know why he's away out there. I really don't know why he's out there, because, and in that pass, like you said, the quality of that pass, the movement from Sockler, the run from Sockler, it gives Scales no chance. I mean, he's hit it about 10 yards to the right-hand side of Scales with a bit of bend on it. He cannot do anything at all. I would also look at Baye as well. Like, I would think if Greg Taylor's playing there with that kind of more natural defensive mindset, now Baye's very good going forward, we know that. I think he tries to help Scales out a bit. I don't know why he's so wide either. And if he comes in, he could perhaps cover Scales on that side, you know, when the ball's played in behind. He's miles away. They're all miles away. And it's a really easy goal in that sense, but still a beautiful goal in regards to the pass and the finish. But when we look at it from a Celtic point of view, I'm really, really disappointed by the collective. And obviously, Scales is the last man that's seen before the goal scored. The players run behind him. I get that. But in the blink of an eye, you're giving a guy all the time in the world to play a pass in the middle of the park, nobody around him, and giving him lots of acres of space to play the pass into, and he played it really well. But I don't know what Scales can do. I really don't know what Scales can do in that moment. I don't think he could do a great deal. So, but I do question where Trusty is. I don't know why he has to follow to borderline right back position. It leaves us wide open. I have no idea why he's done that. And Baye, I think, can actually help out a wee bit by tucking inside. We didn't have the ball. They didn't steal the ball off us and catch us on the break. So we were in a defensive shape. So I have no idea why we were genuinely so wide open. And Scales is left to do it on his own. And it happened again, where I think Baye slides in and misses it, and Scales blocks the cutback. He's on his own. I don't know where anybody else is. So I've got real issues with the partnership, and I think the kind of trusty aspect of that I've got real issues with.
So your back four, Brydo, of course, need to play as a unit, and there's, keeping your line together and instructing each other and tucking in and covering and all those things that ultimately come with playing, games together. And that back four, I don't know, is that maybe the second time that started together with Ross County with the same lineup? Not Dortmund. Taylor started in Dortmund, didn't he? So I would give a bit of leeway in terms of the communications maybe not quite there. And, Baye's kind of new to senior football to a huge extent. I thought it was quite a mixed performance by Baye. I think he looks like a very good footballer. You can see that. But maybe the defensive stuff, there's still a bit of work needing done. And maybe that's just to be expected, Brian, if you get, Baye coming in, as a young footballer, you get Trusty coming in, not on his comfortable side either, right-sided as a left footer in terms of the centre of defence. And I think maybe to an extent, you need to maybe iron out those mistakes, but you might see them in the early stages of that back four playing together, for one of the first times. And can you give a bit of leeway to Trusty and Baye on that occasion?
I don't want to go on heavy on Trusty, but I've not seen him having a decent game yet. And I just don't see his natural defensive instinct. Some people are I suppose like John Terry, right? He's nowhere near as good a football player as Rio Ferdinand, right? We know that. I could see that every game they played. But who would you back in a must-win game and you need to be solid at the back? You'd back because John Terry threw himself. He's naturally defensive. He could read the game. I just feel like that natural defence part, Trusty doesn't have it. The game at Falkirk, he's miles away from closing the player down and allows him to get the shot and scores the goal. The first goal there, he's in the right back position. I don't know what he's doing. We're going to the second goal, but again, he's almost turning his back and he's got to close Shinnie down. Like there's nobody else to mark. So his natural defence should be, where's the trouble? There's the trouble. Get close to it. I just think it concerns me that we've spent money on a guy that I think he's got pace and strength. That's fine. But I just feel like that either the reading of the game or his understanding of it is just not quite there. Is it the system? I'd hate that not to be the case because he's been there for weeks now, and the manager, he's training in that shape and he's watching the team in that shape. But he's younger, okay, fair dues. He's maybe been told to stay high at that stage. Perhaps Aberdeen's system, like I said, they changed it and made it look as if almost like Duke was a kind of second type striker. Perhaps that's spooked us a bit and we've not realised they were changing that shape. But for me, I just think natural defence, why is Trusty drifted away out there instead just pass them on to Alistair Johnson? Just pass them on. He's not going to do any damage there at all. And he just follows him in and leaves. He's left Scales isolated, not for the first time. In the Dortmund game, he wasn't great either, let's be honest. None of them were. But I just feel like Scales is, in my opinion, is almost holding that together. And that's a big concern.
I know it is because I think for the most part, we've always accepted that Carter Vickers is our main defender, our leader at the back. And now all of a sudden Liam Scales has kind of stepped into that role in Carter Vickers' absence. I think in terms of Trusty, you mentioned that he's got pace and strength. Tick, tick. He's definitely got that. But his reading of the game, which you mentioned, it has to be a concern. Now, there's only so much a coach can do in terms of setting up a system and a shape to say this is how we'll play as a back four, and if it's coming down the left-hand side, we'll do this as a unit and vice versa. But if a player starts to wander out that system, as you say, he seemed particularly wide right against Duke on that occasion. If his defensive tendencies aren't quite right, then that is a concern. And the only hope is that the manager can take some time with him, spend time and say, this isn't how we do that. That's how we approach such a situation. Because there's no doubt all this analysis will go on behind the scenes at Lennoxtown, and they'll look at everything in detail, and they'll pull individuals aside, and they'll show them their clips and say, this is where you can do better here, here, and here. So here's hoping. I do think it's early days. I can understand your concerns, but I do think it's early days, and we'll see if it comes good for Trusty and Baye. Aberdeen obviously got a huge lift at that moment, Brydo. It's 51 minutes into the game, and 10 minutes later, it's 2 each. And yeah, you've mentioned there that Trusty's not great, but talk us through the goal from an Aberdeen point of view.
Again, I think their second goal is very similar to our first goal. Maeda makes a mistake, just like the Aberdeen player made a mistake. He plays it into an area of the park where Aberdeen have player in numbers. They get the ball out wide, and when that ball comes back across, their midfielder followed it, and they've got in the box. There's actually 2 or 3 players at the edge of that box, and they've showed a desire to break with aggression, with a real effort to score. And yeah, they get really fortunate with the deflection, no doubt. But just like we got lucky, Hatati's shot gets blocked, it falls to Kyogo. So it's very, very similar to that goal as well. So, but for me, I still thought when you play with Celtic as a defender, you're going to be more exposed than most teams because we are on the front foot. We do have a lot of the ball. If we lose it, we're going to get caught out a wee bit. We play with one holding midfielder where some teams play with 2. You're not that protected. You need to be able to deal with that situation. And I just look, if you get a time to pause it, I don't know what Trusty's doing. He's not aggressive enough to see that the problem is at the edge of the box. There's nobody there. There's nobody else to mark. There's nobody else that's going to cause the problem. So why are you just standing? Why are you almost turning your back? And it deflects off. I think it deflects off him, doesn't it? And goes into the net. And I'm just like, come on. But Maeda makes the mistake, and he doesn't look like he wants to work hard to come back, which is not like him at all. But from Aberdeen's point of view, they break, aggressive, they get their goal, and all of a sudden we're all sitting thinking, what's going on here? We wanted an exciting game, but maybe not this exciting. Let's prefer it if it was 2 or 3-1 up before they start doing stuff like that. So mistakes punished again, like we said, for our goals. Mistake made, punished by Aberdeen, and back in the game, and then it's a proper game from that point in.
Yeah, 100%. There's a good stat from P. McLaughlin. He's saying that we've gone from 7 clean sheets in a row to 12 goals conceded in 5 games. And that's quite a startling number. Obviously, Dortmund accounts for 7 of those 12 goals, but it's still quite a striking stat based on where we're at. I just hope it's not a pattern that's going to continue. You can concede goals in any given game. I just hope that it's not going to be a sign of things to come, because the defence were pretty solid, through those 7 games, and certainly not conceding any goals at that point and looking good for it. But it's an interesting start, no doubt. Brydo, there's a good few other things to get through as we try and kind of wrap up the show in decent time. But you've got Duke's chopped off goal, and I think there's no debate about that, is there? It's just, it has his hand, it's pretty clear. But they're piling on the pressure at that point, and actually you could see that goal coming, as much as it ultimately was ruled out correctly. You were feeling that at that point, that Aberdeen had their tails up, and they were definitely the team in the ascendancy at that point. Yeah,
and we got lucky because, again, I'm pretty sure it was Trusty that lost the first header at the back post, and it fell onto Duke's hand and goes in. Now, it's a handball, so there's no any debate about that. But in the 6-yard box, why is our centre half getting beaten there? I just don't like that. Could the goalie come? Maybe. But just don't lose your battle. And in the second half, I think that we lost a lot of our one-on-one battles in certain positions, and that's why the game went the way the game went.
Yeah, and you've got, that spell of pressure. There was no doubt, as I say, Aberdeen get their first goal in the 50th minute, second goal they're in at the 60th minute, and that disallowed goal on the 70th minute. And that was the pattern of the second half. They were certainly getting a foothold. Celtic are obviously not going to settle for a draw. I think some people have misconstrued the title of this show, Celtic settle for a point. I don't think Celtic sat in and went, we'll just accept a draw. But we've had to settle for a draw on the day. But Celtic have obviously gone for it. We're at home. We're the top team in the country. And he's made various changes. Bernardo comes in. Gypsy King was saying he was hoping that Bernardo would have started. James Forrest came in. Wasn't great for me. Adam Ida, it was unlucky with a header late on, and we'll get to that incident in a moment. And Luke McCowan, and I think Luke McCowan looks really tidy and has always looked tidy in a Celtic shirt. You know, I think he's done much wrong at all. And there's a lot of calls for him to start, and I think he's due a start. And I don't mean a start in a nothing fixture, a team you're really expected to beat. I think he's a guy that could and should be potentially be thrown in for whatever our next big challenge is. Maybe Atalanta, I don't know. We'll get to all of that, get into next week, Brydo, huge game. The big talking point, though, is the dying seconds of the game. So 10 minutes injury time played, Celtic pushing, you know, James Forrest, couple of half chances, different things flying about in the box. Luke McCowan brought down on the very edge of the box. I think it was the right call. No penalty, but free kick on the edge of the box. We can't quite capitalise on that. I think Adam Ida took the shot. And ultimately we end up with a very late chance, I think 12 minutes into injury time. And it falls to Alistair Johnson, who reacts quickest in the box to get a shot away. Now, I'll ask you the question. We've not spoken about it before we came on. We've not messaged about it. What's your take? Penalty? No penalty? Right call? I was, at the time, when I seen the slow-mos, and then you seen the VAR check and Nick Walsh going to the earpiece, and then him saying, no, game over. I couldn't believe it at the time. Now I'm not so sure, but where are you at?
2 words, player reaction. Duke celebrates that because he knows he's not handballed it. That's what I think. I don't think he's handballed it at all. I mean, he could be the biggest con in the world, but it didn't look like that. I think it's just the angle, and I think it's the movement of his arm, and he's swung or lifted his leg. I think he's just found himself in a position. He's got lucky. He didn't get lucky in that sense. And I think if you can only, and even if it did, you can only give it if you're sure it hits his hand, I suppose. I was like you. From the angle, I thought, oh, that's... And Celtic's players' reactions, they all thought it was handball, but I was a bit of desperation. Don't get us wrong. We're like 102nd minute or something of the game. We're going to shout for something at everything. But when you see it, and I've seen every angle going, there's nothing that confirms if it's handball or not. But for me, the player reaction, Duke just jumps up, celebrates, and rightly, because essentially he saved himself, saved his team's unbeaten record, and I just got to go with that. To be honest, I don't think there's much we can say other than we don't know if it hits his hand or not. But which is mad with all the cameras.
Cameras everywhere, and we might get more info on that. Obviously, the SFA are now doing their VAR review show every month, and I'd be amazed if that one doesn't feature on it. So we might get a wee bit more insight into it. At the time, in the moment, I've got the tinfoil hat on. I'm full conspiracy. I'm like, hold on a minute. How can this be? But I've since seen a number of angles on it, and my assessment, having seen various angles, is inconclusive. And to your point, unless the officials are 100% sure it's handball, you can't give that. You can't say it looked like it probably was, so we'll give it. You can't give penalties on laws of probabilities. So I think ultimately it may well have been the right call, frustrating as it was at the time. And the whistle goes, and it's a draw, as we know. It leaves us still in a fine position. So us and Aberdeen now, after 8 games, what are we at? 7 wins and a draw, so 22 points out on top. Rangers fall again at Kilmarnock. There is a mentality issue across the way. There was a bit of pressure on them to go and win, given that we dropped points. Did you caught that game? I think
I thought it was. They are mince.
Well, I thought it was.
It's a disservice to mince, by the
way. It looked like 2 really poor teams, and I'll give the poor weather conditions in the surface. But I was watching it with a mate, and I says, "Tell me the next time you see 3 or 4 passes in a row by any of the 2 sides." Because it wasn't happening. It was pass, out the park, pass up in the air, tackle, pass. It was bedlam. It was a terrible game of football. But ultimately, it's been a decent result from our point of view, and it leaves Rangers 6 points behind both us and Aberdeen. And as I say, Aberdeen have got Rangers at Pittodrie a week on Wednesday. So title-wise, despite the frustrations of only getting the draw, you actually end up effectively in a better position, more or less, than where you were at. So there's a lot to be said for that. Brydo, it's a huge week ahead. We've got the weekly show tomorrow, Monday night, and we'll cover a lot of this and more in different detail. We've then got the Atalanta game on Wednesday. We'll have a pre-match out for that on Tuesday afternoon. But before we get to all that, I just want to come in with your final thoughts, your roundup on what I thought was an interesting and exciting, a frustrating at times day, but overall, this is football, as you say. It's competitive stuff. Some you win, some you lose. Can't win them all. But your overall assessment of the 2-each draw with Aberdeen?
I thought it was a good game of football. Two sides obviously playing pretty well. Got their confidence up. Both leave obviously still unbeaten in the league. I think if you were to say that it would be 6 points ahead of Rangers at this stage, at the start of the season, I think we would all take it. The only surprise package is that Aberdeen are also 6 points ahead of Rangers. So, yeah, I think we need to be looking to win our home games. Obviously, we're used to us winning our home games, but it's football, it's competitive sport, and I just think that we've got to give credit where credit's due, and maybe we just didn't do just enough to win it. But we're in a good spot. We're doing okay. Even the Champions League, we're doing okay. And like you say, it's a big week coming up, and we're doing that with probably missing our best defender as well. And I think, as some of the points were made earlier during our chat here, Carter Vickers is an absolute vital part to what Celtic are trying to achieve. And the sooner he's back, the better. And I think that'll make a big difference as well. So we're doing all that with a slightly depleted quality level.
Yeah, and someone made the comment, I can't find it right now, but someone made the comment that we're a very different side without Cameron Carter-Vickers. I think we can all accept that. We're not as solid at the back. We're not as comfortable and confident, and there's no doubt that we miss him, and hopefully he's back pretty soon. Thanks to everyone who's commented. Some really good comments coming in tonight. P. McLaughlin, Jacob, Gypsy King, Gavin. Good to see Jerry O'Donnell here. Doc, Sean, Kieran, various others. So thanks as always for your comments. As I said, we'll be back tomorrow night, Monday night, with the weekly show. Lots to cover on that one before we head into the game against Atalanta on Wednesday. But in the meantime, bed and bath time for Brydo. Sure you folks are much the same. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you all again very soon.